This is day 2 of mecha. Mecha has a lot of details, so we're probably going to have to divide the adding the details into 2 days. I'm going to try, like I said, keep these videos shorter so they'll upload faster. So it might take us 2 days to work on the details of mecha. Let's get started. I think for the first part of this video, we're going to focus on the upper body. So let's have added, there's a lot of detail in the upper body. I'm just going to start with the head. And I drew some things last week that I'm pretty sure I will erase. Let's zoom in a little bit. Sometimes I like to draw with a mechanical pencil just because I can get a smaller line. Let's see if it'll show up first of all. So the design at the top comes up and then down. Yeah, that shows up a little bit. I feel like I'm going to end up making the top part of the head a little bit more bulbous. Next part, so it comes down. And out. And we'll fix that later. This next part comes down more than half, which is the beginning. It looks like kind of like the eyebrow. So let's do some erasing. Let's leave that there. So this is half, a little bit more than half. And that is the part where the visor is. And again, we might have to make that a little bit wider. I'm looking at the shoulders to width of the head. So I'm measuring using my finger and my pencil. All right. This part comes down around like this. Let me zoom in a little bit more. And I am by no means an anime artist. Sometimes I have to erase stuff I've already drawn because it's just getting in my way. So this part needs to be rounder. I'm sure the other part needs to match that. This has to be my favorite. Mechanical pencil. This is like old school. If you see me pausing for a while, I'm staring the original picture. I'm staring at it, trying to sear it into my memory. It's like I have to train my my hand to draw in this style. I'm not sure which is harder, drawing someone else's character or drawing yours. If you're drawing someone else's character, people tend to judge you as far as does it look like the picture that you used. Does it look like the original? I'm sure I'll fix that. That might need to be a little bit wider. Now typically I would not be making videos because that's not my thing, and I tend to go a lot slower when I draw for myself. A lot of this will make more sense once you start shading. Once you add value or color, it kind of cleans an image up, makes it more discernible. Sometimes I'll go ahead and add value just because it helps me with proportion, I guess you could say. Sometimes I need something more than just lines as a reference point. I'm not going to shade it very dark because odds are I'll be erasing some of this. Right now my challenge is with this eye. Doesn't quite look right. I'm trying to look at all the lines. I think this part needs to come up a little bit higher. Looks a little bit better. It means this line needs to come up more too. So I'm working with a finite space. I don't want to make the head bigger or smaller because it's going to throw off the proportion of the rest of the body. So I know I have this much space, so I'd rather move the eyes than make the body larger and then throw off my proportions completely. It's easier to adjust small things than something in its entirety. So you'll see me working one little area like half to death until I feel like I'm happy with it. Because the only alternative is to draw the head one way and then readjust the whole image. I'm not about that lifestyle. And since I'm not really familiar with this character, a lot of these details, I really don't know what they are. Part of the suit, yes, I know, but it's a lot of detail in this character. I would say this character has way more details than most of the other characters we've been drawing, and I can see I have to push this shoulder out. That's the bad thing about mechanical pencils. So this line would intersect the head if it were extended. See, we're at almost 12 minutes in the video. I'm going to try to keep these at like 45 minutes. I don't want to rush, just because then I would be a hypocrite. I always tell my students to take your time and do it right. I wouldn't be a very good teacher if I didn't practice what I preached. Not that I'm always right. I feel like more often than not, I'm wrong. And it's interesting, once you walk away from your drawing and you come back at a later date, sometimes you notice all kind of details that you missed, or things that just don't look correct proportionately. And it's all about proportion when you're drawing someone else's character, like I keep saying. I think when you're younger and you're trying to copy or emulate other people's artwork, it's a little harder because we gauge the quality of our drawing by someone else's art. Because when you're younger, you tend to typically draw things you see. I find that my kindergarten students are the most creative, and then as you get to fifth grade students, the older students get, the more self-aware they are, and that's when you get people saying, "Oh, I can't draw," which is funny, because if you can write your name, technically you're drawing. You're just drawing lines that represent sounds and symbols and things like that, but you're still drawing. So when I hear kids say I can't draw, I always ask them, can you write? So this should be probably, and I'm looking at this almost tilted, so this point should be at a same angle, and you can measure to see if it's the same length. A little short. The head's not really turned to like a 3/4 view. This character is looking at us directly. So what you have on the left, you should have on the right. Symmetrical balance. A lot of times if we see people looking at us from the side, you would have asymmetrical balance. To me, drawing asymmetrical balance sometimes is a little easier, because when I draw symmetrical balance, or things that are the same on the left and right, you have to be extra careful to draw things the same. And it depends on too if you're right-handed or left-handed. Sometimes I've noticed if you look at things backwards and through a light, and I don't have a light with me right now, but if you look at things backwards and through a light, almost like a light box, you can kind of tell that your objects are leaning to one side or the other. So it's kind of a good idea every once in a while to hold your picture up to the light to see if you are making your character, your drawing, lean to a side. I'm dominant in my right hand. I can draw with my left hand too, but I'm dominant with my right hand, so things tend to lean to the right, I've noticed. I'm not sure if it's the way I see things as a dominant right-hander, or if I just am prone to moving my wrist in certain directions. Alright, I think this eye, I don't want to downplay this section. This section gives it that angular look. Let's see, we are at 17 minutes. This interests me because when I was younger, I used to love drawing robots. I tended to gravitate to sci-fi. I think that's when I started liking science fiction things. Probably around 5th or 6th grade. I'll add some shading because sometimes, like I said, it helps me see how things are starting to look, and I can tell this part needs to be rounded a little bit higher. And it helps if you can get multiple pictures of your character, because then you can kind of tell if it's cut off what is missing. Now the thing that is frustrating is when you find pictures of the same character but they show different things or at different angles. You kind of have to use your judgment as far as what that point of view perspective would look like if it were turned this way or that way. I'm not really worried about making this too dark, because I can always use my eraser to draw or take away some things that I don't need anymore. That's a good start to this part. Let's see how far I can go. And I know that as I erase, my camera is a little wobbly. I've had to extend the arms on my camera stand, and I'm using PVC pipe, which is not always the most rigid, but it is weight saving. All right, let's zoom out a little bit. I'm not going to zoom out all the way because the bottom part I have not really even touched. I'm scrolling up as I draw. Sometimes you have to zoom in and out. I zoom in when I'm focused on detail, and I zoom out when I'm trying to see the overall picture. To me, it's so weird when people ask me if I have a favorite artist, because I really don't. Do I have a preferred way of drawing? Sure. Do I like realism? Yeah. But sometimes I appreciate artistic perspective or artistic license. Because if you wanted things to look exactly like we see them, you might as well just draw or take a picture. So some of the subtle mistakes, as some people would call it, that I or you may encounter, that's just your perspective, I guess your take on something. It doesn't always have to mimic what you're drawing exactly. This part is tricky just because there's so many light values. There's a light line coming down this way. There's another light line coming down this way. This is where mechanical pencils come in handy. Then there's another one coming over here. And I'm definitely going to have to expand this over. Let me erase some of this. I can see it widening, which will definitely change the proportions. Hopefully I can still fit most of this character in. I'm working on this on the other side. I feel like I learn a lot from my students too. It's kind of interesting to see what my students are into. A lot of times they're into things I've never heard of. That's the wonderful thing about getting older. So this line, I should probably curve this a little bit more. This line extended would be here. So this is where the shoulders should be. Let me check my time, 24, we're good for a little bit longer. When you really look at this character, it's so much going on, so many value changes. So many little details. Keep having to look up, look down. I'm not worried about exactly right, but I like to get mostly right. Got to zoom out because this is an important part. It's almost like a focal point in and of itself. So it should be as tall as the head is wide. So I need to bring this down. And it's wider on the left side than it is on the right side. Sometimes I like to use an old toothbrush because when you wipe away eraser bits, as I call them, you get a lot of graphite or lead on your hand, especially your pinky finger. Especially also, not only when you wipe eraser bits away, but when you're drawing. Sometimes what I like to do is get like a little sticky pad, sticky note. Sometimes I like to use the sticky part and just put it on my hand, and sometimes I just like to put something stationary so I'm not dragging my hand across my paper and spreading that graphite, that lead. So I'm kind of getting lost. Okay. So when I make videos for teaching and watch them back, I hate watching them back because I just ramble, I guess, just to fill in the time. I usually don't talk a whole lot, so talking is not my strong suit, even though I'm a teacher. thing I do when I'm teaching a lot is I forget that if I move my paper, it may not be in the camera's lens or not visible. So if I extend this line, and I can tell I've done this wrong, it should point to the point here on the chin. So a lot of times I'll extend a line only to erase the bits, and sometimes I do this visually. I don't always draw the lines I'm drawing. If you're adding color, you don't necessarily have to erase everything. Just draw very light. I really hadn't planned on doing any kind of shading, and sometimes I don't shade as I go, but a lot of times I do things differently every time I draw something. I just won't add very dark details yet, dark shading. We'll do that towards the end. And the cool thing about pencils versus markers, you can get gradients, chiaroscuro, light to dark, adding highlights. For example, I can add this highlight using my eraser. We'll make that darker later, and we'll blend it better later too. Alright, we're at 33 minutes. We'll go on a little bit longer. Let's zoom in to this area. I feel like there are some things I need to clean up. It's better to clean it up now instead of forgetting about it. This is a very dominant line here. This line that goes through this little, it looks like a wing to me. But there's also this little white area. This is the orange trim. Sometimes I look at my drawings and I'm like, man, I really suck. It's just so weird. At the time you're drawing something, you feel like, oh yeah, I'm doing really well. And then you go back later and you're like, oh, I didn't do such a great job. I feel like that's a good stopping point. I have to get ready for class anyway. And that's some of the upper body details of our drawing of mecha. Let me zoom out. Oops, sorry. I'm using a very primitive almost way of recording. See you all next time. This is day 2 of mecha. I decided to combine 2 videos because last week we didn't get a whole lot of drawing finished. We got some of the upper body, like the head and the chest area, but I'm going to try to at least finish with the drawing part of I'm going to try to finish the upper body completely. So let's see if we can squeeze the rest in 45 minutes. So this is how far we got last week. Actually, week before last. We're going to try to finish this area and this arm. We don't have a lot of details to finish on the left arm because we can't really see that left arm. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with this shoulder and I'll work my way to this arm, even though I probably should work on this arm to get started because it has not as much detail. To start on the shoulder, I need to finish this area first so I can keep my proportions. Remember, it's all about those pesky proportions. Got some notifications popping up on my computer, so that's why I'm kind of pausing. I'm looking at this part of the shoulder to see where it would intersect the body, and it needs to come down a little bit lower. This top part would be a little bit higher than that, so this top part is good. Let's check the width. So this part should be almost as wide as the head right here. That's good. Maybe a little bit wider. I know when I erase, the camera bounces a little bit. I'll try to figure out how to fix that later on. So just bear with me. I'm trying not to ramble so much. You might probably appreciate that because I'm actually listening to music, so I don't feel like I have to fill in all this space. Remember, sometimes we add a little bit of shading, a little bit of detail to try to get an idea of how it would look overall. And I always tell you that don't get too attached to what you draw, because odds are you may have to erase it anyway. The cool thing about this character is that there is a lot of detail. The bad thing as an artist trying to imitate this is that there's a lot of detail. So as you see, some things you'll be able to draw quickly. Some things may take you a little bit longer. And if you feel like you're kind of stressed out a little bit, having a hard time, do something that you would normally do to relieve stress, like listen to music, chew some gum. That's what I like to do. So you might hear me smacking. Now I'll spare you because a lot of times I'll end up singing or something. It just kind of gets my mind off of what I'm doing. I tend to overthink everything I do when I draw in life. I mean, you name it. So sometimes it's good just to get out of your head. Sometimes when I draw, I tend to, I don't know, even think about life. I tend to daydream a lot. This little part right here, a lot of stuff here. I know I'm not getting it exactly the way the artist drew it. But you know what I usually say. I'm not worried about getting it exactly the way the artist did it to begin with. That must be my coworker knocking on my door. I'm gonna have to ignore them. Sometimes to not get so confused, I have to add some detail anyway. It just kind of helps me. So I'm starting to get my hand dirty, my pinky finger, because I did not do my little trick. Sometimes it really just kind of amazes me when people can come up with something so creative and so detailed on their own. This took a lot of imagination. So one thing I'm noticing is I'm going to have to drop these legs a little bit more because of the detail in the torso and the chest. All right, the head. All right, my proportions are pretty close. The body, the torso, should be about the same length as the head. Actually, one thing I've noticed, I tend to draw a little bit better when I'm standing up. Which is why when I make these videos, I don't mind standing. As a teacher, I do this anyway. I feel like I'm about to have this area under control. Somewhat. I say that now and I'll mess up something. So this line would kind of intersect this. So I'm always referencing a line I'm drawing to something I've already drawn to keep the proportions. For example, this line, if you extended it, would lead to the top of this. It's a little rounded. It's not quite pointy. The cool thing about art that I like, it's up to personal interpretation. I find myself doing what I normally don't do. I'm adding so much shading and detail. Honestly, the reason why I'm doing that, I don't want to go back in and get confused about what area I've drawn and what area should be shaded. So the top of the thigh would be here, somewhere here, and then the other leg would be at a diagonal. So it would start here and come down. So I wasn't too far off. Whee! Camera's bouncing. Sometimes for shading, mechanical pencils are not always the best for shading. For shading, I tend to use regular pencils. Just got a notification that my battery's about to die, so hang on. There we go. Now my phone won't die on me, and I don't have to stop and add another video. Let me zoom out. So this is what I have so far. Where was I? Here. So I'm kind of going against my original plan. My original plan was to work to the right and then back. But because I'm trying to finish the torso, it kind of took me in a different direction. I'm looking at this part right here, the chest plate. This line should go by the eye. I'm just looking at the angles of this part. Alright, that's good enough. Let's look at this part. I'll do the proportions probably in the next video as far as how big the leg should be in relation to the proportions of the upper body. I have a sneaky feeling I'm going to run out of room at the bottom, so I'll probably add paper at the bottom so I can fit the whole body in. Again, the problem I have when I first sketch, I have a rough idea of the proportions, but then once I start adding detail, everything tends to expand. So one thing I should do is probably start even smaller. That way when I expand, I can expand within the same sheet of paper. Drawing this character is testing my attention span. One thing I don't like that I do is I keep going over the same line. It's almost like I'm hesitating I like thin, clean lines, and by the time I'm done repetitively going over the same line, the line has gotten a lot thicker than I want it to. There, that's better. I feel like this part is too wide, but you know what? Oh well. "28 minutes. Whew. Hopefully I can finish at least the torso. I'm really not happy with this area. Ugh, okay. My attention span and my eyes are kind of battling. Actually, this whole area. I'm looking at the head and drawing a line down. This shoulder should be within that line. So what I'll probably do off camera, everything to the left of my pencil, I'll probably erase and make smaller. Or I could make the head larger. That would mean the head would have to be here. I'm trying to think which would be easier. Probably redrawing the head. Well, not redrawing, but making certain parts bigger. because there's just so much detail here. I just don't want to touch it. So I'm definitely sure this part will come down. Just for this project, I'll probably tape another piece of paper on the back that extends down. So this line, this piece, drawing a line down. Should contain this part of the shoulder. Like that. So I'm kind of happy with this area if I don't look at the head. It's usually at this point where my brain is absolutely screaming. I almost added this piece again. Oh my God, look at my pinky. All kind of lead. Boy, whew, this part. It's just so much detail. Oh, this area right here is driving me nuts. Ugh. I'm going to try to attack it from a different angle. Mm-hmm. this orange part. The white part or grayish part. Oh, man. This area right here is giving me a fit because it should be more at a drastic angle. Whew. I'm going to end up having to fix this area. And what I'll probably do, instead of redrawing the head, I'll probably rework this. We're at 42 minutes, so I need to stop because this video and the last video will be merged. Didn't get very far. Added a lot of detail, added a lot of shading. I usually don't add all the shading within the first part. I usually just do sketching, add proportions or check proportions, add more detail, and then I infuse shading and add value. So I'm kind of working out of my normal routine, out of my normal technique, I guess. And each character might be a little bit different. When I see you again, I will have reworked this area to make this angle a little more drastic. So that's what I have to look forward to. See you all later. So I spent about 15 minutes kind of redoing this area here. I had to shorten this, and I basically reworked this little area right here. That way this point would basically come to what looks kind of like an ear. So if you drew a line straight down from here, it should come to this point, which is the angle I was trying to get. I may still have to accentuate the shoulder so it kind of creates that that drastic cutback. So remember, mistakes, you're gonna make them. I keep referencing that the way I am recording these videos is very rudimentary. I mean, this is stuff you all can build at home. I mean, if I can do it, anyone can do it. You can always use a plethora of extension cords. And what I want to show you all is this little thing here. This is why my camera is always wiggling. So I have this adjustable, and I used a cheap little camera stand, adjustable camera stand. It's basically wire inside. This is where my phone is usually located so that we can see downwards. And it's just mat board, a lot of hot glue, some, like I said, a lot of PVC pipes. So it allows, this area allows the camera to flex out and in. This was my attempt of making a stabilizer bar, but again, because it's PVC, it's still kind of wobbly, and this is attached to a different PVC pipe. It's just something that you all can do at home as well. I had to redo the lighting. I had to move the light directly over the drawing area, and I did that this morning because the light was actually on one of these pouch stands, and every time I would move my hand I would get this wicked shadow, so I had to move the light directly above. This again, just a poster frame with the plastic covering where you put the poster behind it. Under it is just a piece of wood with some hinges. This drawing area can hinge higher or lower, but this seems to be the optimal setting for me, and it's not super high, it's not super low, and it's just some styrofoam that holds that in place. I always have candy. Oh my god, I have such a bad sweet tooth. This is what I kind of rigged this morning. I just used some milk crates. If I usually have my laptop here, but again, if I keep that there, sometimes you'll get a pretty bad shadow, and I don't want my arm in the the screen, the viewing area. Now, since I'm on a cart, thanks to COVID, a lot of art teachers in my district aren't. But this is my little cart. Again, I always have a ton of candy. I just have to always, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. I just love sweets. So this is my little camera. Now, when I'm teaching, I have this downward facing camera. Excuse my mask. I have this downward facing camera. So when I'm drawing, I can share that, which is really kind of neat. And that's another good thing that came out of the whole COVID thing, is being able to draw live using different cameras and utilizing downward facing cameras. The bad thing about teaching on a cart, and I know I'm deviating, is I have to carry things with me, anything that I might need, because if I don't have it, I can't exactly run back and forth from the class I go to my art room. So I kind of have to prepare everything ahead of time, which I'm not really a planner at all. I really am not. So it's been a challenge. Anyway, the setup that I have for making videos, you can easily do at home. If I can do it, you can do it. Just PVC pipe, use what you have, and you can create any kind of recording situation, recording place, equipment. Just use what you got. I'll see you all next time.